Hello everyone, welcome to today's family program, and I'm your guest speaker, Tony Liu. I'm a third-year grad student in IVA or Integrated Visual Arts program. My work consists of character design, illustration, and graphic novel, aka comics. Today, I'll be talking about manga and give you guys a demo on drawing the character's head in manga style. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, what does manga mean? Some of you might know the answer already. Manga is Japanese word for comics, but you may not know is that the word manga is composed of the two kanji. Man means whimsical or impromptu, and ga means pictures. It is coined in the 1800s by the famous ukiyo-e artist Hokusai to refer to the doodles in his sketchbook. However, the first use of the word in the modern sense was later by Rakuten Kitazawa, who was the first professional cartoonist in Japan. So what was the first manga existed? You may wonder. Well, many believe that manga are originated from the scroll dating back to the 12th century and believe they represent the basis for the right to left reading style. During the Edo period, there was also a book of drawings embedded the concept of manga called Toba Ihan. But the word manga, as I mentioned in the previous slide, didn't come into common usage until the late 18th century, with the publication of such work as, sorry if I mispronounced the following name here, Santo Kyoto's picture book, Shujino Yukikai, Aikawa Miwa's manga Hyakujo, and Hokusai's manga books. So these are all considered as some of the oldest manga in the history. And now let's move on to the modern period. In the immediate post-war period, manga are mostly children's adventure stories and family newspaper strips. This is also the period where we see many famous works from the father of manga, Osamu Tezuka, for example, Astro Boy and Princess Knight. As we get into the 1960s, anime TV shows were produced for the first time, and manga went wild with speed lines, fast cars, and action heroes. 1970s is known as the golden age of manga. A variety of genres of manga appear, like epic space opera, horror stories, historical drama, romance, as well as politics and religion. It was also the first time when women, rather than men, created a story in shoujo manga. In the 1980s, manga became big business, with publishers and editors relying on readers' poll to guide the directions of the story. And at the same time, anime exerts a growing influence on manga character design. For example, eyes get bigger, hair get wilder, body gets slimmer, which is probably why we have the manga style. But we'll talk about that later. In the mid-1990s, Japanese economy went through a recession which affected the manga process. Publishers began to rely on licensing and finding unique markets such as video game manga, pachinko manga, boys love manga. And afterward, in 2000s, the rise of the internet and new technology drastically changed the reading and buying habits. People are now reading mangas in store without buying, loaning manga from friends, or going to all-you-can-read manga cafe, which resulted in publishers thinking more in global terms, as well as distributing through new media, for example, digitizing the manga. In Japan, manga are usually serialized in large manga magazines, often containing many other stories. Each presents in a single episode with approximately 20 to 40 pages. And after a manga being serialized for a while, individual mangas will then reprint as graphic novels. The manga magazines are aimed at particular gender and age group. There are 4 demographics of manga, which are shonen, shoujo, seinen, and josei. So shonen, or boys manga, aim at boys from early elementary school to the late teen. Shonen manga spill over with action, sports, battle scenes. Science fiction and fantasy are also common subjects in shonen manga. Shoujo, or girls manga, the most popular subjects of it are romance, comedy, drama. Although mystery, horrors, and boys' love story are also featured in specialty magazine for the female readers. Seinen means young men, but the term describes all mangas aimed at older males reader. So business, crime, and political dramas, as well as historical and military adventures, are popular subjects among seinen manga. Lastly, josei, or women's manga. Um, for college age to mid-age women, josei manga deal mostly with work, family, and romance. Now, the topic that we are here for, manga style. Many people want to draw in manga style, including myself when I first began to draw. But the fact is, manga don't really have a single style. Because manga aren't a single genre, with big eyes, big lines, or samurai swords. The term manga covers all Japanese comics, and every manga artist has his or her own specific style. If you are interested in manga, you probably have a few favorite manga artists in your mind already. So one suggestion I would give you is to study his or her work. That is how they draw the characters and their mark making, so that you see the artistic choice they made that makes their style. However, there are actually some artistic conventions used in the mainstream manga, which I briefly mentioned when we look at the history timeline of manga, right? So here, I'm only going to cover the head. So large eyes, female characters usually have larger eyes than male characters. Small nose with only a brief L-shaped mark to locate them. Sometimes with two nose hole, and sometimes none when the character is facing forward. Flat face, spiky pointy hair, uh, and this is the result of a simplification, and I'll talk about it as I begin the demo. And here's the image kind of shows different manga artists take on the fire feeds as, which I think is pretty interesting. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is that I will redraw Robert Downey Jr. in manga style so that you can see some of the choices I make to turn Robert Downey Jr. into a manga style person. So grab your drawing tools and some papers and feel free to follow along with me. Alright? Alright, so whenever I draw the face, I will begin with a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect circle. Okay, you can see mine is not that perfect either. So what I want you to do first is to put down a circle on your paper, and then I want you guys to take out like 1/8 from each side of that circle. The reason why I'm doing this is because when we look at the face in front of you, it is more like a rectangular shape rather than a circular shape, right? So this is why we put that two lines on the side, and let's using these two lines and draw a rectangle inside that circle. Again, does not have to be perfect. Alright, and now I want you guys to also divide that rectangular shape into in half, like this. And now I want you guys to take a measurement from the top of the circle and that middle line, and then bring down, so this area, I want you guys to bring it down from this to the bottom. So just roughly estimate it, doesn't have to be perfect. And afterward, you will connect from this circle, the edge of the circle, to that last line, to that new line that we just drew there. So something like this. Alright, so here are something that you need to know. So we have 4 lines right here, right? So The first line is going to be the indication of the hairline. Alright. The second line right here, which is a little bit tilted, so let me redraw it really quick. It's going to be where eyebrows is at. And then the third line right here, that is going to be the bottom of your nose. And then the fourth line is going to be your chin. And of course, these are just the pseudocode that can help you guys to draw the figures really quickly. So, and since we know the face is always symmetry, so let's put down a line in the center as the symmetry line. Alright? And let's also connect from closer to this point. And let's draw two lines downward and with a little bit curve at the end, like this, as the neckline. Because we just don't want the head, we don't want just the head floating out there, so that's why we always draw a neckline to indicate this is the head. Alright? So, if you are doing this on a paper, I would recommend you to grab a new paper and use that as a reference for you to draw the head. But if you're using the digital software, then you can turn that layers into 50% and then create a new layers on the top of it. So now that we have a guideline for our character's head, now let's take a look at the characters now. So one thing that I always do when I draw my characters is understanding what makes them who they are. And the facial features and the hairstyles are the key points here. So what I'm going to do now is to analyze Robert Downey Jr. and understand what makes Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. Right? So I'm gonna quickly come to here and then analyzing Robert Downey Jr.'s face. Alright? So let's see. So here in this movie poster of Endgame, we know that Robert Downey Jr. has that intense looking because Endgame is really intense. Don't spoil me because I still haven't watched the movie yet. So anyway, so he has that intense looking right here. Alright, and then he has that sharp eyebrow, sharp thick eyebrow. Alright, and let's take a look at the nose. He has sort of big nose in here, sort of big nose. And then what else we can see in here? The sexy goatee and mustache, goatee. And the cheekbone is also very visible. Alright. And well, Robert Downey Jr. hairstyle is also different than, let's say, Chris Evans, right? So, and here we can quickly just block that hair shape into three different chunks: the top, right, and the left. So these are the several things that we notice in here. And then remember what we talked about earlier about some of the artistic convention in manga style. Big eyes, spiky hair, flat face, and the L-shaped nose. L-shaped nose. Alright. So before we begin to draw Robert Downey Jr. on our artboard, so this one concept I want to talk about right away is the dark accents. The dark accents are the outline that we see in anime, in the cartoon, which is really a key point in here in drawing the characters in manga style, because we are drawing the outline. We are not drawing every single details in here. So one thing to think about the dark accents is the outline, the contour of the characters, of course. And another thing that can help you to, figure out where to put the dark accents is the shadows, where it is casting, right? So knowing all this, let's come back to our artboard now. And now, since we have the guideline, it will be much easier for us to put all the features that we see in here in our artboard. Alright, so first, the hairline we can quickly put in there, since that's where the line number 1 is for. So let's take it again. Robert Downey Jr.'s hairline. It's kind of like straight line with a little bit triangles in the center, right? So let's put a line in here. Alright, and we can also put that hairlines in here quickly, like this shape and going downward, right? And let's plug in the hair. It may look pretty weird at first, but let's plug in here so that he's not balded. All right. So of course we'll work on the hair later. But now let's move on to the eyebrow, which is the landmark number 2. So in here, we noticed earlier that Robert Downey Jr. has thick, sharp eyebrow. So let's put that in here. So let's use that line to guide us where to put our eyebrows. So I'm gonna put the bottom line first, and then I'm gonna increase the dimension to increase the thickness of his eyebrow. So we know it's thick and it's sharp, so we can put it right here. Something like this. And we also know he has that intense looking, and look at here, we can see the dark accents here because that's where the muscles begin to work, and then that create that shadows in here, which we can do it. We can put lightly in here because usually when we because usually the muscles shadows are not as dark as the outline, so that's why we only put really lightly lines in there to indicate that muscles. So that's the part of the reason. Alright, and then the eye shape that we know, well actually let's begin with the nose first. So the nose we talked about earlier, we can do the L shape like this, or we can do 2 nose hole like this, or you can not do any nose at all. But for me, um, one of my biggest influence is Naruto's. So in Naruto's characters, when they have frontal characters, they do nose hole instead of the L shape. So that's what I'm going to do. And like I said before, when you look at a lot of artists, you begin to know what they do, what kind of choices they make, and you can copy their style in that at first do that. So here I'm going to use Naruto's technique to help me to draw the nose. And we know Robert Downey Jr. has sort of big nose, and you can see right here the nose hole are a bit further apart, so we are going to draw the nose hole, but we're going to make it bigger, not too big, because small nose is still kind of like the feature of manga characters. So I'm gonna 2 nose hole in here to indicate that is the nose. It may be with a little bit indication right here to indicate that nose bridge, right? And now let's draw the eyes. Let's build in the eyes, shall we? So we can also divide right here as 1/3. That's going to be the center of the eyes. Alright? And usually, when we draw the eyes in manga, we drew something more like a parallelogram shape, something like this. And it depends on the characters. It can be big, But in this case, since we're drawing Robert Downey Jr.'s, we can make the eyes a bit smaller. It doesn't have to be that big. We can make it smaller, and then follow either the parallel shape or kind of more like a diamond shape. Um, but one thing I need to point out though, this line right here, this point right here is indicating where the eyeballs is at. So when you have eyeball that placed right here, you probably will need to move that point so that it is begin from the eyeballs. Alright, so that's just something for you guys to know. So let's put in the eyes now, shall we? So we can see Robert Downey Jr.'s eyes is more like a parallelogram, like this one right here. So we are gonna use this as the way to help us draw. And also, the top of the eyes is usually darker than the bottom. It's because that's where you cast the shadow, and then also when you put the eye shadows, eye lines, that's going to be where you put it. So usually the top of the eye is darker than the bottom. So let's put that in there. So let's have that parallelogram shape in here. I'm not sure if I pronounced that word correct. Here. And let's do the eyeballs. And the eyeballs, of course, is going to be circle. And you can make the eyes big to match with the manga style. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit big, not too big, just a little bit big. Something like this. Alright. And let's put on the other side as well. Top is darker, bottom is smaller, and I'm gonna move this eyes a little bit above. And actually I'll do further moving afterward, because I can immediately see these eyes probably need to move down a little bit. Move a little bit, okay. Alright, so we have the eyes placed as well. Alright. So now let's work on the details. Sometimes you can just put the pupils in there. But some artists, they will also put the highlights in there. And here, we know the highlights is coming from a little bit top right, so we can put that in there, of course. But just make sure that when you put the highlights in there, make sure that the directions are correct. You don't want to put something like this. You want to put one highlight on the other side and then the other one on the other side, because the highlights is where the direction of the lights come from, so it's going to be the same. So just keep that in mind. Or if you are interested in shoujo manga, they do some crazy eyes, eye shape and eye style, so you can look into that. But for me, I think I'm just gonna do a little bit more closer to what we see on here, which is the pupils and then the highlights in there. Alright, so I'm gonna fix a little bit. And we know Robert Downey Jr. has double eyelash, so we can put that in there as well. Alright. So, now let's take a look at the mouth. And mouth, again, between the 3 and 4, it's also where you can divide that area into 3 chunks as well. The 3.1 is going to be where your mouth is at. 3.2, that's going to be the chin muscles. So this part is going to be a chin muscles. Alright? So, with that knowledge, and then this part is going to be chin muscles. So we can put the mouth in there right now. And we know he is intense, so that's why we need to make him a little bit frowny face in here. You can draw a straight line and then with two endpoints a bit thicker. Alright? And here is also the artistic choice coming in. Usually, I like to put the bottom of the lips in there, but sometimes, like Bleach, he like to also put the top on there. So it's up to your choice, but for me, I think I'm just gonna put the bottom lips in there, like this. Alright, so now it looks weird, because Robert Downey Jr. has his signature mustache and goatee. So let's put that in there, shall we? So let's put that here, just a little bit above that mouse line. And at the bottom, we see that goatee forming here. We can block in the shape really quickly for now, and then we'll come back to it later. So now you will say, geez, that looks really bad. And I agree, it looks really bad when we just block in that mustache in there. So this is where when I say earlier, when you have a favorite manga artist, you should look at what they do in their choices. So here, I also prepare some of the examples for me to look at. So specifically, let's look at Naruto's Fullmetal Alchemist and also Bleach. Let's see what they do with the beard, with the character that has beard. All right. So the first one right here, you can see the eighth tails. You can see the way he does with the beard is to put the outline for the beard. So which is what we did, but it doesn't look really well, right? So let's move on. And in Fullmetal Alchemist, we see Edward's dad also has similar approach, but you can see he still put a few more lines to indicate that is the mustache. So let's see what that make a difference, which is still pretty bad. So now let's look at one more example, shall we? And let's take a look at this character right here, Jinsei. I think that's his name. Sorry if I mispronounced his name or if I got the name wrong. Right here we can see Jinsei's his mustache is more like a sketchy mark in here, in which we can apply because Shinsei also have a black facial hair, and like Robert Downey Jr., Robert Downey Jr. also has black facial hair. So what we can do is that let's apply that technique in there. Let's have that sketchy lines in there and then fill in his mustache. And actually, Robert Downey Jr.'s mustache has a little bit more at the end. So let's put that lines in there. Put a few goatees in here. Alright? So now, I think it's much better than a few minutes ago, right? Don't you think? I think so. It's much better, to be honest. Let's do that. And then since we know the The facial hair is black, so let's also fill in our eyebrows with black color. And then I'm gonna make it thicker. And again, let's have that sketchy lines in there. Alright? So, now we begin to kind of see Robert Downey Jr.'s accents in there. Alright? But we're not finished yet. Because we still have his ear to fill in, and then we also know like cheekbone is also important. So let's fill in with the ear in there. So ear will be begin from this point, from the center of the eye. And what you want to do is to think of your mark handle shape, something like this. This is how most artists do for their ear shape. They simplify the form in there. So we can draw that mark handle shape in there for both ear. Begin from there, going up, and then downward as a mark shape, mark handle shape. And of course, since we have a reference, you can actually take a look at what Robert Downey Jr.'s ear looks like in here. And you can see it's more like a kind of like butterfly wings shape, sort of. But for me, I think I'm just gonna stick with it. And of course, when you have a reference, you can take a look at what they do, right? Kind of more like a mark shape that I show you guys right here. So, and let's fill in with all the lines, shall we? Since we didn't do that earlier, let's fill in that jawline there for Robert Downey Jr. And I'm gonna make him the mouth a little bit more visible down there. Alright? And then cheekbone that we notice is coming from here to bottom, and which is going to be useful because this line, this circle, is going to be where your jawline is placed. And if I drew the perfect circle earlier, then this line would be matching there, but oh well, it's alright. It's alright. So let's put that jawline in there, shall we? We can follow the circles on here, but we cannot here. So here you go. Alright, so we kind of begin have that in there. And actually, let's also put these two lines in here, shall we? Because we know Robert Downey Jr. is a little bit aged, so. And actually, I also need to make the mustache a little bit smaller. It was a little bit too big. So, like this. And make it even a little bit more symmetry. A little bit more symmetry in here, shall we? So as you kind of look at your characters, you can kind of like just going back and forth and try to fix anything that you think are not correct. So right here, I think that's pretty good. And we put the muscle line here to indicate his intense looking, like what we did up here with the eyebrow muscles here, right? So let's fix it a bit, and we can, yeah, let's leave it like that. And then let's also draw the neckline there, so that it doesn't look too weird. Maybe the bottom of the chin. We also need to outline that. Alright? So we begin slowly to have Robert Downey Jr.'s face. As I fix it a bit more, and actually I need to use different erasers. Fix it a bit more. You can see I'm always looking at the outline of the shape of these characters. And he's facing forward, so that's why the eye should be more at the center. And the highlights is a little too big. Maybe I should fix it later, but when I see it right now, I just want to fix it, so sorry about that. Alright, so now let's move on. After I adjust that eyebrow. Alright, now let's move on. So now the hair. Another key features about manga characters is that we can kind of see that the hair end up pointed, and that's spiky hair characteristic. And you may just draw it because a lot of manga artists do it, but here's the reason why they do it. So remember the word I talked about earlier, simplification? That's the concept behind it. Because the manga artists are not paid to do every individual hairs. So what we're gonna do is that we can take a look at the hair and let's say, okay, so here is one group. We group this hair together, and maybe there's another group right here, and here, as well as here. So you can see as I group all this hair together, you can see this forms an angle right here, right? This, when I put this down there, you can see that spiky hair appear in here. So that's the reason why, because we are simplifying our form, so that it is become a group of hair instead of we are drawing each and every individual hair out. It could, but most of the time we don't have the time to do something like that. So we are always kind of just group some of them together. So that's why you can see the hair in manga character is kind of like sometimes it's kind of spiky looking. So that's the reason why. So now that we group some of the hair together, we can kind of group this. So we're gonna group that. So that's going to be one. So begin from here. We're going to draw the hairs something like this. And of course I'm gonna block in the shape really quick and then readjust how I want my spiky hair to look like, right? So then this, maybe this hair should be a bit closer. This. Like this. And then here we can also see some of the hair. So we can make them as a group first and then we can divide that out afterward. Maybe it will look great as a group already. So here we have another group, right? And lastly, the last group over here have that shape, and then we also have one that's sticking out right here, like this, right? And here we can also group a little bit, like here and here, something like this. So let's take that. Here we are forming that group, we are having that group, and then we're going down. Let's actually make it just a group, something like this. On the other side, same thing. We're gonna do the same. Right here, we have that curvy. Ooh, we have this shape right here. So let's put that in. So like this. And now let's erase the lines that we blocked in early, and so that we can decide how much details that we want to get into in here, or how much change that we need to make the hair look nicer. So here I can see maybe I want, so I'm gonna erase right here for you guys to see. So here I'm thinking, okay, maybe I would like to have a few more here in here. I have a few more that is popping out from there, right? And here maybe I would like to have this here still in there. And I want to make this more curvier. Maybe I'll break this as this part and this, so something like this. I want to break this part as something like this, and going downward. And maybe I don't want to separate this anymore. I want to group this as a whole group. We can group that as the whole group, right? Something like this, and with a few more spiky hair looking at the end, right? And right here, since we noticed the hairlines has acting like this, and here like this, we can put that in there to indicate the group, right? Here, a little bit, here, and then one coming from here to indicate that movements of the hair. Instead of drawing out each and individual hair movements, we can just select it to pick a few that can indicate the hair, right? So here we know that this is going this way, so we can have that one begin from here. And then the hair is going this way, right? We can just kind of like play around with it and how we gonna move the hair. And remember, another interesting uh, style of anime in character design, that is the hair gets wilder. So you can see it's beginning to go crazy in here, but I try to not make it too crazy, um, so that we can still have that the realistic experience in our Robert Downey Jr. design, right? So I'm gonna this down a little bit like this. And actually, I'm gonna make this even lighter. I don't want it to be too distracting, right? And here we can have this a little bit bigger now. Maybe have one more spiky here in between. So this is a point where you can just begin to readjust based on your aesthetic of the character looks like. And you can again to adjust using all the things that you know about manga and put it in there. And which is why I say when you have a manga artist that you like and that you admire, you should always begin to look at what they did with their character layer, and then apply it on your own characters, right? So here I'm just gonna actually I don't like how it looks like, so I'm just gonna make it as kind of more circular shape, and then with this a few more spiky going downward because that's two different groups, right? So because the hair here is acting differently, it's going like this, right? So which is kind of what we want to mimic in here as well. So I'm gonna put one here that is going outward like that. Few more here, some few more spiky here. If I say like that movement, and slowly going downward like that. And here let's notice the hair is in front of the ear, so let's block that. Here we also notice the hair is going this way, so we can probably put a few letters indicating the hair directions in here as well. So something like this. And since I'm doing digitally, what I can do is I can fill in the shape with black color. If oops, that didn't go well because I have this gap. What I can do is fill in the gap in here for the hair color, so that we keep our our hair color consistent instead of just the beard is black but the hair is white, which can happen, but in this case we don't want it to look like that, right? And here on the other side, I believe the hair is also overlapping the ear. And then let's just make that hairline it more visible. Alright, and then maybe put that two lines here, shall we? Here. So voila, here we go. Here is kind of like how I take Robert Downey Jr.'s in manga style. Um, so I'm gonna fix a few more, and then I'll wrap it up. So I think this is pretty good for now. So here is what I got afterward for you guys. Um, so it's a little bit better, but still have a lot to work on. But I think this is pretty good enough for me. So yeah, well, that's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the demo, and I hope you guys learned something from this demo as well. Um, So thank you so much. As always, please stay safe and healthy, and have a good weekend, guys.